I'm Kelsey. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am wearing one of my fancy booktube hats. I'm out here in the living room in front of my little mini Christmas tree because it is a cozy setting and I think this is going to be a kind of cozy video. And while I have the little mini tree up, I might as well make use of it as a background for the holidays, especially since at night the light in my living room is way better than the light in my bedroom where my actual setup is. So I'm going to take advantage of my little mini tree while I have it. And today's video is an idea that I am stealing from Maya Reads, who actually did this video last year during Vlogmas. And I commented and said, ooh, I love this idea, I'm stealing it. And then it took me a year to actually get around to doing it. And that is pairing books with favorite teas. Now, I am a big tea drinker. I don't drink coffee, so tea is my primary source of caffeine. It is my morning beverage. I do want to point out this mug that I am drinking tea in while filming this video because my friend gave me this. I don't think I've ever shown it on this channel, but it is favorite hats. And it's got all of these hats on it, and it's also got one inside there, right there, and it's delightful and I love it. But as I finish up this mug of tea here, because I drank a lot of it while I was setting up to film, I'm not gonna lie, it's almost gone, I will be sharing some of my favorite teas that I have on hand right now, and what books I think go well with them. As you know, I always put Goodreads links for all of the books I mention in my videos down in the description below. Here, where possible, I'm also going to put links for where you can buy the teas that I mention. I can't promise that all of them are available online, but I'll link the ones that I can find. Now, I am a bit of an uneducated pretender at loose leaf tea snobbery. These are all loose leaf teas. That is how I prefer my tea. And they are all real teas, as in like no herbal whatnots that don't actually have tea leaves in them. I really love flavored teas, which makes me, I think, not a very good tea snob, but I really like flavored black teas, and so that's what a lot of these are. And so the first tea I want to talk to you about is one of the teas that I absolutely rely on as like my morning lifeblood. This is rose-scented black tea from Harney Sons. This is the first of a number of teas you're going to be seeing in this video from Harney Sons. Like me, you may have encountered their teas being sold in various cafes and coffee shops, but they are also online and they have just one retail store of their own, and it is in New York and I shop there, so I buy a lot of their teas. And this rose-scented tea has a very strong rose smell. You open the lid and you smell, that's roses. It does have some visible rose petals mixed in, but mostly that scent and that flavor is coming from the tea leaves themselves having been scented. And I like to steep this dark and strong and rosy in the mornings. And so the book to pair that one with for me is pretty obvious. It is Rose Daughter by McKinley. This is McKinley's second novel-length Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's her less famous of the two. Beauty, her first one, is the most famous, possibly her most famous book, period. This one, however, is longer. It's slightly more mature. It focuses on a strong sisterhood relationship between Beauty and her two sisters, who are usually portrayed as vain and frivolous in the fairy tale. In this book, each of the three sisters have their own hidden strengths, and it also has a somewhat non-traditional ending to the fairy tale story. But this book is called Rose Daughter for a reason. It is really all about the roses and the rose gardening. And so for me, it is the obvious pairing with my rose-scented tea. Next is another flavored black tea from Harney Sons. This one is called Paris. I believe they have a whole series of teas named after different world cities. I also have the Florence one. I bought that on impulse, having not tried it before, and I don't like it as much. But this has in it black tea, oolong tea, so it's not 100% black tea. Vanilla flavor, blackcurrant flavor, bergamot oil, and caramel flavor. So it's very sweet, fruity, vanilla-y. I definitely smell and taste all of those things in here. I can't say that I've ever particularly noticed the bergamot. So if you're not a fan of Earl Grey and that scares you, I don't think that will be an issue with this tea. But because this tea is named after the city of Paris, I did want to pair it with something French. And I would say that if any tea in my collection is whimsical and fairy tale-ish, it might be this one. So I have decided that it pairs well with Wonder Tales 6 French Stories of Enchantment, which is a collection of 17th century French literary fairy tales edited by Marina Warner, with each story translated by a different literary luminary. The wittiness of these stories really shines through in this translation. A lot of these stories are written by women. Women really drove the literary fairy tale movement in the 17th century French salons. I think it's a fascinating period of fairy tale history if you're interested. And I also think this is just a really good introductory book of lesser known fairy tales if you want to start reading some of that sort of thing. Next is another Harney Sons flavored tea, but this is not a flavored black tea. This is pomegranate oolong. The pomegranate flavor is present but pretty mild in this. This oolong tea has like these very big tea leaves that unfold very large when you steep them. Oolong is also a pretty good tea for re-steeping if you're into that. And the flavor of oolong tea, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of somewhere on the spectrum between a black tea and a green tea. It's very unique, very different, especially with that pomegranate in it. I love flavored teas, so this is so much fun. But I do think, depending on your taste, this may take a bit of an adventurous spirit. And I wanted to pair this with a book that both had a thematic tie-in with the pomegranate and was also a book for an adventurous reader willing to read and drink tea a little bit outside the box. So for that, I chose the extremely meta deco-punk science fiction novel Radiance by Catherynne M. Valente. The mythological pomegranate tie-in is not super strong here, but it is present. Valente loves to reference mythology all over the place, and there's a good deal of classical mythology referenced in this. A lot of the mythology references in this are tied to like the names of the different planets in the solar system that are named after different gods. There is a bizarre underworld sequence that takes place on Pluto. This has an alternate history of the film industry in space. The writing style is intense. There are layers of different genre narratives surrounding the disappearance of this filmmaker. And like the pomegranate oolong tea, this book has a flavor you will not soon forget after you've tasted it. Next is the first tea on this list that is not from Harney Sons. This is Victorian Earl Grey from Fairway, which is a grocery store in New York that sells these, tubs of pretty nice loose leaf teas. And this is truly a step above and beyond your everyday Earl Grey. The black tea base of this is a rose congu, which is basically like a scented rose black tea, like the first one I showed you, except I don't think this one is actually congu, because I think if it was, it would probably say it. I have had an actual rose congu before that was a milder rose flavor than this one. It was lighter and sort of fresher and brighter, whereas this is a little bit heavier. But anyways, I digress. The base tea in this is Rose Kongu, and it has rose petals, lavender, rosemary, and bergamot oil. And this is one where you will taste the bergamot oil, so if that's a big turnoff for you, and that's why you don't like Earl Grey, you might want to leave this tea alone. But if you're someone who doesn't like Earl Grey because, you know, it tastes like old people or like dishwater or something, it's possible that you maybe haven't tried the right Earl Grey and that this will be the one to win you over, because this is just super, super floral. The lavender and the rose are definitely the strongest flavors in this, along with the bergamot, and it's a strong flavor, but for me, it's a good one. I would say this is not your grandmother's Earl Grey. And so I, of course, had to pick a book set during the Victorian era that has a particularly strong, immersive flavor. And so I chose Under the Pendulum Son by Jeannette. This is about the sister of a Victorian English missionary who follows her brother to his mission in the Feylands. It takes place, for the most part, in like this creepy, mysterious castle in the Feylands. It's very, very gothic. Very inspired by the Brontes, but also like way out there imaginative fae fantasy. So like not your grandmother's Earl Grey. Next, I have a tea that I only have like a small souvenir-sized packet of that I get at one of my favorite coffee shops. I bought this small packet of it specifically to have on hand for this video, even though this is not one that I normally make for myself at home. Normally this is a treat that I get for myself when I go out to this coffee shop, and I kind of want to keep it that way. This is definitely going to be one where I'm not going to have a link for you in the description for where you can buy this tea, because I don't know who their supplier is. But this one is called Buccaneer, and it had to be in this video because I was not going to miss an opportunity to recommend you a pirate book that goes well with tea. This packet doesn't have the ingredients listed on it, but I did snap a photo of what they say is in this tea at the coffee shop. They say it's Indian black tea, coconut, apple, cocoa beans, white and dark chocolate bits, and vanilla cream flavoring. So it's definitely sweet, a little bit fruity. You can definitely taste the coconut. And the cozy pirate book I would like to recommend to go with this tea is actually a graphic novel. I sometimes have a hard time finding and recommending pirate books that sort of fit my aesthetic for what I want in a pirate book. I don't really want a lot of plundering and violence and brutality and illness at sea, especially not with my tea. I am much more into a sort of whimsical escapist fantasy of what pirates could be than into any of that harsh, gritty reality. And so the graphic novel that I would like to recommend is Cursed Pirate Girl, Volume 1 by Jeremy A. Bastian, who works very, very slowly. So even though this came out years ago, there's no Volume 2 yet, but I do believe there is evidence he's still working on it. But the ink art in this is just so intricately hand-drawn, and it's got this sort of whimsical, like, portal fantasy pirate adventure world thing going on. It's a little bit Alice in Wonderland inspired. It's definitely fantasy, very magical, and I recommend it. Now, at this point in the video, I would like to pause a moment to point out that tea is a plant and it does not grow in white people countries. White people have tea for reasons that are sometimes uncomfortable, like colonialism. And so as I was putting this video together, pairing teas with books, I did give a good amount of thought to where in the world these teas were coming from and whether or not I could pair any of them with books that represent those parts of the world. And for the most part, up until now, by and large, you may have noticed that I failed. To illustrate how badly I failed, I would like to point out that I have one favorite tea that I could not put in this video at all because I could not in good conscience pair a white person book with a mango Ceylon tea. And I certainly didn't have a Sri Lankan book to pair with that tea. And I wasn't even sure that I had a South Asian book I could recommend that felt like it was a good match for the mangoes. I do, however, have a Chinese tea and a series of books based on Chinese mythology and folklore that I feel go really well together. And this is not a black tea, but it is flavored, and it is one of my absolute staples of tea drinking, and that is Jasmine Green Tea. I am not picky about my Jasmine Green Teas. This one happens to be from Harney Sons. In fact, this is probably not my favorite Jasmine Green Tea I've tried. It's a little unremarkable, a little bland, but really anything that is Jasmine Green Tea I'm fine with. I'm not picky, and I drink a lot of Jasmine Green Tea. Again, me and floral teas, I love it. But I've been drinking Jasmine Green Tea and liking it since long before I really considered myself to be a tea drinker in any major way. I find it extremely comforting, extremely calming, and I have this nostalgia attached to it. And that is sort of the same feeling that Grace Lynn's middle grade fantasy novels give me when I read them. This is a loose companion trilogy of slightly interrelated stories. She does her own cover art and illustrations. There are these beautiful full-page illustrations. The first book is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. The second is Starry River of the Sky. And the third, which is my personal favorite, is When the Sea Turned to Silver. These read sort of on the younger end of middle grade to me. They are definitely just so cozy and so whimsical and so delightful and heartwarming. And that is why I wanted to pair them with the Jasmine Green Tea. Now I am very nearly done. I have just one more tea on this list. This tea is my favorite recent tea discovery, and it is the tea that I am currently obsessed with. It was the tea I was drinking at the beginning of this video, and it is another jasmine tea, but not a green tea. Oh no, this is a jasmine black tea, and it is jasmine black pearls. This is from David's Tea, and it is super expensive. I splurged so much to buy a whole tin of this, and I have no regrets. It smells amazing, it tastes amazing. The pearls come rolled up like this, and each one expands into actually quite a lot of tea. I only need like 2 of these pearls to get a big, strong mug of tea going. But I am telling you, despite my current obsession with this tea, I had the hardest time thinking of a book or series that felt like it would fit. So in honor of small things that evoke a lot of feels, I am pairing this tea with the Murderbot Diaries novella series by Martha Wells. These are short books that garner a lot of enthusiasm amongst their many fans. I'm holding up the 4th book, Exit Strategy, because it's the one I have in print, and also because it is my favorite in the series. And these were books that I was actually reluctant to pick up until I started hearing all of the reviews and all of the hype, because I just didn't imagine that I would want to read something with Murderbot in the series title. I was so wrong. Murderbot is such a lovable and unique narrator, just as this is a lovable and unique tea. And this book absolutely swept me away, just like the Jasmine Black Pearls did. I also want to say that I put these together because for some reason, and I can't quite put my finger on why, the flavor of the Jasmine Black Pearls to me is like, it's not a fantasy book flavor, it's a sci-fi tea. I don't know why, but like, it just is. You have to taste it. If you do taste it, tell me if you agree with me. Anyhow, that is the end of my book and tea pairings recommendations. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you've had any of these teas, let me know what you think. Anyhow, I do hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.